Welcome everyone. Good afternoon. I'm Anna Kennedy, Executive Director of LOHF, where we work to improve the mental wellness of youth, children, and families here in Lancaster County. We're glad to see you today. And I know we're expecting some more folks, but I think in the interest of time, we should probably go ahead and get started, and we will have more folks joining us over the next couple of minutes. So our intention with these calls is to provide a space to learn and connect as helping professionals during the COVID-19 pandemic. And each Monday we welcome a guest to share their insights on self-care with us. And we also practice some good self-care practices together. So we ask for your patience as we navigate this together. And I think today more than ever, this is really important for us to do in our work, in our lives as professionals in the community, helping others. With the protests that happened this weekend here in Lancaster and across the country, practicing good self-care is very important, and we appreciate you joining us today. We're thinking about this a lot today and reflecting and recognizing the hurt and trauma that's existing in our community and has been here for some time. So the work that you do to help others during this time is so important, and we're grateful, and we thank you for joining us. So before I introduce our guests today, I just want to cover a few housekeeping items. We are recording this call so that you can revisit this content after today's call if you'd like, or if you'd like to share it with a friend or colleague, you're welcome to do so. We also recently shared some links on our website, LOHF.org, so that you can go back and listen to past recordings if you'd like. And again, that website is LOHF.org. Please keep your microphone muted during our call today, and we welcome you to use the chat if you'd like. I also want to encourage you, if it's helpful for your own self-care, if you'd like to turn off your video and relax, and maybe that can help you more fully participate in the self-care practices that we're going to do today. So again, thank you for joining us. I'm Anna Kennedy, Executive Director of LOHF, and this is the Self-Care for Helping Professionals Zoom call. I'd like to introduce our guest, Lisa O'Hara. Lisa has been in practice as a licensed clinical social worker for over 18 years, and currently she sees patients at Move Forward Counseling here in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And she provides telehealth services and sessions now to anyone in Pennsylvania. Lisa specializes in helping women to make meaning from their experiences, to find belonging, and to achieve fulfillment. Welcome, Lisa, and thank you for joining us today.
Hi, thanks so much for welcoming me and for giving me the opportunity to offer support to all of you who are such an integral part of helping people weather the storms of the great unknown that we're all faced with and have been for the past couple months. Today we're going to talk about the role of affect regulation and self-care. And to start, I wanted to read a poem by Rumi that I think really kind of expresses the importance of recognizing our feelings, being able to sit with them, and really looking hard at how our ability to do that affects how we manage them, how we express ourselves in the world, how we are regulated, and how we co-regulate each other, our clients, and really anyone else that we have relationships with, since we are at our hearts mammals who are wired neurobiologically to bond to each other. And so to that end, I'm going to start the poem.
And I'm going to share it on the screen so that you can read along.
as I read it, I would like everyone to kind of sit quietly if you can and just notice. Put your feet on the floor, feel your feet there. To exhale, I know a lot of our grounding work, there's a reason for that. And so I really just want everybody to pay attention to the sensation of breathing in and out. And when you feel like you have a good sense of that breath coming in and coming out, I want you to see it and then see if you can notice other parts of you that are aware of you sitting here breathing. So The Guest House by Rumi. This being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. We welcome and entertain them all, even if they are a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the sham, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whomever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So I want everyone to kind of sit with that and just notice what it's like to feel yourself breathing and see if any of those visitors come to you. If there are feelings that you're noticing in your body, if they're manifesting as a physical sensation or as a thought, maybe an idea, and see if you can pick the one that's the most prevalent, the one that seems to want the most attention at the moment, and just sit with that for a second. See if you can kind of hold it at a distance and welcome it, and just observe. Just notice what your body does in response to that. Notice how your breathing changes. Notice if there's any tension or release in your body. And just see if you can just feel into that part for a minute. And just recognize his presence. So as you're holding that part, I think Anna is going to move forward with more of the presentation. We're going to be revisiting that part towards the end of our half an hour together. And so if you can see if you can remember who it was or how it was, what you felt, how you noticed it, we're going to go back to that in a little while.
Thank you, Lisa. So you've described your practice to me as grounded in internal family systems therapy. And I'm just wondering kind of if you could describe a little bit about what that means and how that understanding can help us practice good self-care.
Well, internal family systems therapy, otherwise known as IFS, is an integrative form of therapy, systems-based. It has a fair amount of Boehnian ideas that back it up. It was actually founded and developed by Richard Schwartz. He is in Boston, and he was working extensively with young women who had eating disorders and was recognizing in working with them in the traditional family therapy sense, a lot of them were getting worse rather than better in terms of healing. And really through a sense of following his intuition, he heard a lot of these young women talk about parts of them. A part of me wants to heal, a part of me wants to hold on to this eating disorder. And he started realizing that people's reference to themselves in terms of parts was not a coincidence. And so rather than intervene with folks from the model that a lot of us have been trained in terms of being the helper who is going to do the helping to help people get better, he asked these young women to start to look into their parts, to feel them, to notice them, to turn their attention internally, to see what these parts wanted them to know about who they were, what their functions were, what they were trying to communicate. And that's the reason that I love the poem that I read early, because it's such a beautiful way of introducing us and reminding us that we all have parts. And so the reason that I work from, one of the ways I work is from an IFS perspective, is because it recognizes the multifaceted experiences we all have as people and as practitioners, and that our clients have. And so it is one of those things that unites us all. Recognizing we have our own parts helps us to help our clients normalize the existence of theirs, thereby taking a lot of shame away. So when we work with parts, the thinking is that they are aspects of our experience that manifest as parts, and that at the heart of it all, we have something called a core self. I talk about it. IFS uses the words core self. I tend to use the words wise self, because that is that place we go when we find our breath, when we are in our bodies, our needs are met, we are feeling safe, and we are regulated and grounded. The goal of IFS is to help people learn to access their wiser self, to recognize that it's a part of them that they have always had and will always have, that is not touched by the external experiences like trauma that can so deeply affect people's ability to feel safe and effective in the world and in their lives, and to feel like they're enough. And so the goal is to spend as much time accessing that wiser self, and then from that place, learning to acknowledge the existence of our parts. The theory is that parts develop as a response to overwhelming emotional experience that we have as children, that we cannot make sense of due to not having fully mature brains. And that every part is welcome, because every part has a role. Every part has a message to send. Parts can have their own feelings, their own thoughts, their own likes, their own dislikes. Parts can have relationships with each other, in addition to having a relationship with wiser self. So the goal is to bring people in touch with that wiser self. There are the F's of identifying that wiser self part. The first is to find that part. The second is to focus on that part. That's that feeling into that I asked you to do earlier, sitting quietly, noticing what your body's doing, what thoughts you're having, what emotions are coming up. Being willing to focus on that part once you find it, fleshing it out in terms of how you experience it, what that's like for you individually, allowing yourself just to sit and to feel it, to look inward and to notice that from that wiser self place, then befriending it, being able to welcome it, recognizing that every part is welcome and has a reason for being there and has something to teach us, not unlike the poem, and then finding out what it's afraid of. Because often our parts are divided into 3 different types. There are the firefighters, there's the managers, and there are the exiles. The exiles tend to be the more fragile parts that have had really emotionally overwhelming experiences that left us feeling really vulnerable. the protective parts grow up around those parts, literally protecting them. And then there's managerial parts like firefighters that will do what they need to do to keep those exiled, more fragile parts safe.
Mm.
From the perspective of wiser self, it is allowing those parts to surface, befriending them, welcoming them, and engaging with them through the 8 C's. And they are courage, compassion, curiosity, calm, clarity, connectedness, confidence, and creativity. And if you think about those 8 components of exploration, they are all parts of ourselves that we have access to when we are coming from that grounded, wiser, integrated self. And so when we can meet these parts that often have felt rejected or felt really afraid and uncertain, with those 8 aspects of curiosity and exploration, we can distance ourselves from those parts that tend to come up as reactions rather than responses, learn about them, give them a voice, and then take care of them. And so the beautiful thing about IFS is that not only are we asking our clients to find their wiser self and learn how to heal their parts, but we are able to do the same work. It is a great equalizer and a great way to humanize ourselves from a place of self-compassion and curiosity. Someone asked for me to repeat the 8 C's, and I will repeat them for you again. Courage, compassion, curiosity, calm, clarity, connectedness, confidence, and creativity.
Thank you. So I wonder if maybe you could talk a little bit about how we make meaning of maybe these parts of ourselves, how we maybe get in touch with ourselves, and how we can do this also for each other and in our work as helping professionals. And maybe that means affect regulation or, yeah.
It absolutely does. I think in terms of affect regulation, a lot of that is neurobiologically based. Mm-hmm. That we are born with those 2 forms of memory, implicit and explicit. Implicit being in our sympathetic nervous system, and explicit in prefrontal cortex function. And so when we recognize the importance of not just feeling our feelings, but being able to sit with them, a lot of that parts identification work has to do with finding that deeper, wiser self. A lot of times when we talk about meditation or mindfulness, that's really what we're talking about. Mm-hmm. I think in our culture, mindfulness has really taken on almost a cliched meaning, and in reality, what it's about is sinking into that deeper, wiser self place of regulation. So it is not just a cognitive process of using your conscious mind to think your thoughts. It really is a matter of going deeper into your body, paying attention to what your body is doing, where the tension is held, where lightness is felt, and it's starting there, and then using that cognitive skill to explore our own emotional landscapes. Glennon Doyle talks a lot about self-care, and I love her version of it in that she talks about how we as human mammals are socially conditioned, and especially we as providers are conditioned to not feel our own feelings. I think we, like a lot of frontline personnel who are responding to COVID, who respond to people who are in trauma a lot of the time, have that sense that if I stop and I feel any of these feelings, I'm going to get sucked down that rabbit hole of feeling them forever. They're never going to end. And I'm going to be this way. And I'm going to be overwhelmed and incapacitated forever. And so the way that we learn that that isn't true in real time, to provide corrective experience for ourselves, is to practice finding that wiser, deeper self, going there, and while we're there, being willing to acknowledge any of the feelings that come up and just to sit with them. I think this past year or so, we've heard the words lean in a lot. And I think I like those words in the context of leaning into our wiser selves, because normally we are conditioned to abandon that self. When those harder feelings come up, when we feel helpless, when we feel hopeless, when we feel ashamed or guilty or overwhelmed, our tendency and the way our culture pushes us to handle those things is to avoid them at all costs. But in order to remain regulated, to have that affect regulation, we have to be willing to go to that deeper place, to that wiser self, and acknowledge those feelings as they come up and welcome them and hold them. Even if we need to hold them at a distance, it allows us to see them more clearly, to be curious about them, to be empathetic towards ourselves in terms of, I wonder what this feeling is. I wonder why my shoulders feel this way, or where this emotion's coming from, or what this thought is, and what can I learn from this?
Mm-hmm.
What's it trying to teach me? And so part of it, the first step in terms of that regulatory experience, is to let yourself sink into that wiser place and feel what you feel and name it. If we don't name it, it doesn't exist. We need to name it so that we can then figure out how we feel about it and how we want to handle it. And so that next part is to recognize that often those feelings are kind of a form of intuition. They're a form of internal nudging, if you will, that's pushing us in the direction of authenticity, that's pushing us in a direction of learning that we need in order to stay regulated, to not have that kind of removed awareness that we have our elbow leaning against the door of the psychic closet that we don't want to look at stuff in. It's the junk drawer of the human soul, and we spend a lot of time leaning against that when we're awake. The problem is that our implicit memory, our sympathetic nervous system, knows that all that stuff is still in there. It's still alive, if you will. But a way of maintaining affect regulation is to bring it out and welcome it and sort it in a conscious, grounded way, which is what we're talking about. And so by being willing to acknowledge those things, to pay attention to the nudges that our internal lives are giving us, we then can engage with those places in those experiences from a place of faith and a place of imagination. I wonder who I would be if I didn't feel this right now. I wonder what it would be like to feel this and be able to handle it differently than I have. I wonder what it would feel like to have this experience, or be like to have this experience, and to go into the world with it in a different way. Yeah. And imagination is really where hope lies. When we have access to our imagination, we are in that place of creativity and response flexibility. And so we may be used to feeling feelings, and we may be in a habitual way of noticing, especially the negative or uncomfortable ones. I actually don't like the word negative in that context, because it implies that there are bad feelings and good feelings. And technically, if we go back to the poem, they're not bad. They're there to inform us. And if we befriend them, we can learn an awful lot about ourselves that allows us to stay in that regulated place, unafraid of our own emotional landscape, therefore able to be present for our clients. And I think we all know that we can't ask our clients to do more than we're willing to do ourselves. Yeah. And so when we are in that deep place of wise self-access, we are creating that sense of internal coherence for us that we then create for them. And so
in our last few minutes thank you so much. I know we wanted to spend just a few minutes to maybe practice this together as a bit of a guided meditation. So I wonder if maybe you could just lead us as we close out today's session in what that might feel like.
Okay, so
Thanks.
I want everybody to get quiet like you were at the beginning, and to get into the place of breath. So again, if you need to feel your feet on the floor, feel your butt and your back in the chair, and let that support you. And then just focus on your breathing. And when you feel like you're in a good rhythm of breath and you've accessed that wiser part of you, see if you can notice those parts that came to you at the beginning and focus on one. And as you focus, just kind of notice it. Feel into that part. How do you know that it's there? How is your body responding? What are you thinking? Is it a physical sensation? Is it a thought? Is it an emotion? And when you feel that you have a good sense of it, see if you can ask it to turn toward you. And if that part is willing to turn towards you, see if you can ask what it wants you to know. What's important right now that it wants to teach you? What message does it have to give you? And the message may come as a thought, it may come as an image, it may come as a physical sensation. But whatever it is that it brings to you, see if you can welcome it. See if you can open your heart to it. Be with it in a non-judgmental, non-critical way. And just take what that part is offering. If it feels like it's something that's heavy, hold it lightly. If it feels like something that's reassuring, bring that into your heart and welcome it. And when you feel that that part has given you all that it needs to give you, I want you to envision taking that part outside, somewhere in nature that feels safe to you. It can be the woods, it can be by a stream, it can be the beach, the mountains. And as you and that part walk side by side, and you are holding the message that that part gave you, if it's something that's heavy, see if you can put it down. If that part will allow you to release it. If it's something that's heavy, can you release it into the water? Can you bury it in the ground? Can you place it under a tree? If it's something positive, can you sit with that and see how that positive message embodies inside of you? Can you notice where it sits, where it wants to rest? And when you feel like you have an idea of where that's resting, can you turn to that part of you and thank it for the message that it sent, the information that it gave? Can you express gratitude to it for its presence and its willingness to engage with you, to help you learn what you needed to know? If there's anything that you would like to do with that part, whether you'd like to hug it or pick it up, hold its hand, you can feel free to do that. And then you and that part can walk back to where you originally met. Thanking that part again for its willingness to be present and its willingness to teach. Noticing in your heart that sense of warmth and acceptance and kindness and gratitude. And shifting your conscious attention back to that wiser self. Back to that feeling of being grounded. Back to your breath. And just focus on maybe another inhale and an exhale. And on your last exhale, if you've had your eyes closed, you can put your hands over your eyes and open your eyes into your palms very gently. And then move your palms away from your face. Just check your body one more time to see what's happening. Move in any way that you need to. You may feel you want to move your shoulders, you may want to move your fingers or your arms or your feet. And we are back.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
So thank you so much for sharing this with us today. I really appreciate it. And for everyone on the call, we will, as Jeanette said, send a link to you after today's call with a link to the recording and also some of the resources that Lisa has recommended, the poem and some others as well. So I just want to express my gratitude to you for today. Really appreciate it. And for everyone on the call, thank you for being here. Thank you for doing the work that you do, and be well. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Bye, everyone. Thank you.